All right, so what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, and this is episode 37, close to 50, of movie reviews with my beautiful wife, AKDI. Say hi, boo.
Hi everyone, I'm AKDI and I'm from Turkey and I am reviewing movies.
All right. We also have Big Avery in the chat. Shout out to Avery Adams as well. And today we're going to be talking about a Turkish film directed by a man whose name I cannot pronounce, though this is the second film that we have seen from this guy. AKDI, who is the director that we're talking about today?
Nuri Bilge Ceylan.
Nuri Bilge Ceylan. And
Yes.
the first film that we reviewed from him was called The Wild Pear Tree, which I actually really, really adored. But this film, About Dry Grasses, his latest film, released in 2023, I don't know exactly how to feel about it. We watched it last night. It's about 3 hours long. It's all in Turkish with English and Korean subtitles. I don't know. I don't know. Actually, how did you feel about watching this film?
I mean, I don't know why you liked the other movie that much and you didn't like this movie because honestly, if you think about it, yes, this movie was longer, but like the dialogue was easier to follow and I don't know, I felt like the feeling was kind of the same even though like I guess the other one that we watched, the first one, it had like a better sort of revealing end or symbolism if that makes sense.
All right. So my thing about the Wild Pear Tree and why I like that movie more than this movie from Nuri Bilge Ceylan, hope I said that right, is
Yeah.
that the Wild Pear Tree had sort of like a goal that it was trying to get to. It was about the young man trying to publish his book and make it out of his small town, right? And this one felt more like, okay, it's about this guy who's a teacher who wants to get out of town, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's going to fall in love. Maybe he's going to get in trouble because he's like a problematic teacher. It felt like the movie didn't have any goal that it was working towards. And the thing about Nuri's movies is that they seem to always be around these men who have some issue or some problem, but they sort of get some resolution to their problem, or we're able to see them, make them see the error of their ways, like the end of The Wild Pear Tree or like the end of Winter Sleep. In this one, the guy didn't learn anything. He was an asshole the entire time and became a bigger dick at the end. So that's how I feel. I don't know. Where am I? Tell me what you think.
I guess. I mean, the main character of this movie was like this guy who was sort of stuck in this place where he's teaching and yeah, and he was sort of lost and he was kind of like a bad person. So I don't know, I feel like the movie was representative of that really.
But that's
It
not
was like,
representative of anything. That's just a guy who just doesn't know what he wants to do.
yeah, like he was having like this existential crisis, right? And I mean, in real life, how do we come out of existential crisis? Like, it's not really like a point where we're like, oh, now I don't have crisis. It's more like, us figuring things out day by day. And then I guess time moves on and we just deal with some stuff. So I
Okay.
think that was like, that's why we couldn't have like that certain, okay, now it's done moment, maybe. I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I think, the main guy, Samet, the main character, he wasn't having an existential crisis. He was a crisis on everybody else's existence. He was the thorn in everybody's side, really. But for anybody who didn't see this movie, we're about to walk through the whole plot line. There's really not that much to talk about, so we won't be going too in depth. But we're going to talk about the general themes of this movie, a surprising scene in this movie, and trying to figure out what this movie means. And actually, I sent over a movie review from reverseshot.org. Do you see it? Do you have it open?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just read through this because I think this is like a good synopsis of the film, and this is a great way to break it down, and we'll discuss it as we go. So I'll just read through the first paragraph, and then we'll talk through it if that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so in the early scene in About Dry Grasses, Samet, who's played by this guy named Deniz Çeligolu, I hope I said that right, Akti.
Celiloğlu.
Jelilolu. All right. He's an art teacher who's assigned to a school in a rural village in East Anatolia. Gives his favorite student, Sevim, a small present on their way to class. As they walk, she loops her arm through his, and he very briefly touches her back. The dynamic between them, which is central to Nuri Bilge's Ceylan's latest movie, beguiles from the outset. It can be whatever you want it to be, depending on how you look at it. It's easily passable as bait, daring you to read more into it than what's there on the screen. Working with the smallest of gestures, Ceylan is able to create the tension of being right on the line between appropriate and not, and the possibility and fear of Samet crossing that line animates all of his scenes with Sevim. Ceylan has been acclaimed by critics and festivals over the course of his 8 film career, and he is still able to surprise with such moments of complexity. So basically, what they're saying is, when you watch this movie at the beginning, you see this guy who's sort of like a middle-aged man working at this rural school in Turkey, and he's sort of like the cool teacher, which is funny to me because it seems like in Turkey, just to be a cool teacher, the bare minimum is that you at least have to have a hairline and you can't hit your students with a ruler. And so, like, this one girl sort of likes him because he like gives her presents, he talks to her sweetly and stuff like that. And so you're watching the movie, you think, okay, that teacher's he's about to fuck that little girl. That's what you think the movie's going, but that's sort of not what happens. But I don't know, actually, what did you think about those opening scenes?
I mean, like the fact that I think he's a cool teacher, like, might be because he's not from there, right? He's from like a bigger city, I think Istanbul. They don't specify it, but I'm gonna guess Istanbul. So, and he's also like this art teacher. So I feel like maybe that's why they think he's a cool teacher, and also because like these schools in in these small villages in eastern Turkey, they are like they don't get a lot of funding, or they don't have very qualified teachers. They basically get like whoever they can. So when the teachers are there, I think the students like just really love them, and
Hmm.
really respect them in general. It's like more of that traditional, at least like when I think of like my past, it's more of that traditional teacher student relationship. Like you're always, respectful no matter what your teacher says.
Right, right.
And yeah, go ahead.
The thing when I was watching him teach the class, because there's like a few scenes where he's teaching the class, right? He's also a photographer. So the way he teaches his students about art, he'll bring one of his photos that he that he's taken, and just slap it on the board and tells the students, "Okay, draw it." And it's not even like a big photo; it looks like a Polaroid. So like, there's like 20 students in the class, and they're all meant to copy this little photo that's tacked to the board. And then the kids say, "We can't see it," or "We don't want to draw," and he's like, "Shut up." Draw. And I'm like, that's the bare minimum to be a cool teacher in Turkey. Is that what education is like in Turkey? Like the teacher just comes in there and just yells at you until you do something?
Not everywhere, of course. But like I said, like those teachers, there's a rule in Turkey where if you're a teacher, you have to go serve in a place. We talked about this with Wild Pear Tree as well. You have to go do like this teacher duty in wherever the government really sends you, and the only people who can choose are people with disabilities, or people who are like in military families and stuff like that. So probably, most probably, this man was sent here, and he was here for 4 years. He feels stuck. So it's like, and he's an art teacher, and most of these kids, if they're going to be something, they don't want to be artists because they want to like earn money to make their families proud and stuff like that. So they're aiming for those big jobs, doctor, lawyer, and those sort of things, or teacher even, like because it's a solid job. So I feel like he doesn't take his lessons seriously, and kids also don't take him like that seriously. That's why he's also the cool teacher. It's like
Okay.
a empty, like it's like the free period.
Okay, interesting. But even those scenes though, they didn't seem fun. Like there was no time when we watched that those scenes when he was interacting with the class and said, "Oh, he has a great relationship with the students." Did you feel that? Did you see that at all? Because I didn't.
No, but yeah, like I kind of hate those teachers because, for example, I had a teacher like him, and he was actually a teacher in like this after school course while I was preparing for the exams for high school. And he was like this teacher who was young and he was cool, and he was like suggesting us songs of Green Day and stuff like that. And we're like these, I don't know, seventh graders. So we think like, oh, he's so cool. Like he's always goofing around, he's making jokes and stuff like that. But then one day, I don't know what happened, but we were supposed to take a practice exam, and one of the kids was late, and he saw this teacher being in our class. So he was like, "Oh, like this is the cool teacher," and he just walked in like nothing happened. And our cool teacher supposedly punched him in
Wow.
the like abdomens,
Wow.
and everyone was like so shocked. It was like he had like a some sort of crisis or something, like an episode.
Wow.
And
So he was like, "You're not gonna treat me like no punk now."
yeah, like it was so weird. Like I don't know.
That's insane. Yeah, I mean, as a teacher myself, like I'm watching this film and I'm like, it's so different than the American system. You know what I mean? Like in our schools, the art teacher is sort of always that cool teacher, right? Because art is more of a free period. But they don't just make us like copy a picture. They don't just make us like sit down and write whatever is on the board. There's like activities and games and projects that you're supposed to work on. But there was none of that in this film. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've never had classes like that.
Hmm.
Like my art teachers or any teacher really, like music or art teachers, they always made us like do some sort of activity. But
Hmm.
like I said, like in these schools, nobody really checks what the art teacher is doing.
Yeah.
So for all you know, he could just be like playing radio and tell kids to just draw whatever the heck they want.
Right, right. But the thing about Samet, the main character, is that in the classroom he does show a little bit of favoritism to Seven, that girl that we see at the beginning of the film that he's like giving gifts to, and they have like a friendly relationship in the hallways and stuff like that. But when he's in the classroom, he's sort of like indifferent or mean to the other kids, right? But then also when he's out of the classroom, he's sort of speaking up for the people of the East. He's saying like these people are like proud and beautiful, and they have an interesting culture and stuff like that. But then he sort of treats the children of these people sort of as like kind of mean. And I didn't know if that came from like hypocrisy or that's because that's what's expected of like a teacher in Turkey. Like you're expected to walk in there and be hard disciplinarian. Or if he was just being fake. Like on one hand he says he loves the Eastern people, but then on the other hand he talks to them any sort of way. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's kind of like a complex. It can be because since he's like from the big city, like yeah, he's saying like I appreciate the beauty of these people here, but I still think I'm smarter than them. And I feel like it was sort of that sort of thing, the inferiority complex a
Mm-hmm.
little bit within him. Like he had it with everyone he was talking to, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel like maybe that's why.
You mean he felt inferior to people or he felt superior to people?
Superior, sorry.
Okay, interesting.
Superiority complex, yeah. Just because like he's not from there, he's from like the big city, and he's like, oh, I'm a photographer, I'm like creating art here, but nobody has the capacity to understand
Yeah.
like my art here and stuff like that.
Yeah, something like that. Also, moving forward with the story, like Samet also is like being protected by the army, and there is like sort of this like army presence that's in the east, because I believe in eastern Turkey there is a lot of terroristic activity, insurgency, maybe ISIS or like Kurdish forces that are like fighting the Turkish government and stuff like that. So at the beginning of this movie, like Samet leaves the school, and then like a tank rolls by and says, "Samet, come to the office of the general," and stuff like that, and he has to like check in with the general and like tell him his updates and stuff like that. And it's interesting because like the school is sort of ran like that prison, like that, the idea that all of these kids are really in like this military compound, because the principal and other teachers randomly walk in there and search all the kids' bags and yell at them for bringing makeup or extra pencils or pens to the school that are sharp. And like it gives this whole background of this film that nobody really cares about these kids, because really they're just there to police them, because the army is everywhere. I don't know if you got that vibe from the movie.
I mean, about the army, like, yeah, there are some places who have army bases. Like in a village like that, you might have like a school and a small army base. And also in that army base, like, the most of the people there as well are sent there, and they have like this duty they have to complete there, and just like the teachers. But I don't like they shot this in Erzurum, and I actually went to Erzurum and I did like that school project in one of these like small villages, and it was like so small, even smaller than this one, that they didn't even have a school. And yeah, so I don't think there's like terrorism in that city that much, but yeah, like those like sort of it's kind of like I don't want to like put them in a bad light, because honestly when I went there, like everyone was like just so lovely and so smart at the same time. But I do think like tradition is much like harsher there and much sort of like old fashioned when it comes to like social traditions, if that makes sense, like the unwritten rules, like girls shouldn't wear this or that, and those type of things are so much like stricter because everyone knows one another and everyone can judge one another. If something happens to your daughter, or your son does something to someone else, everyone will know, and that will affect your business, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's so like strict when it comes to policing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if the police are running around seeing if the girls' skirts are above their knee or below their knee, because I think they're there like for those purposes, like to make sure the city is safe from terrorists and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. You're from Turkey, so you know better than me. But that's
I
the vibe I
mean,
was getting.
they just have to have like military bases in every other place.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it was like actively, fighting with the terrorists or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because they have that more in like border towns, and this town is not a border town.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why. But yeah, like there are still like, for example, Kurdish people or Turkish people who live together, or Kurdish villages and stuff like that. So maybe also that's why there's more military there, because Kurdish people are the minority and they get more policed.
Yeah, they're like I hate to say this, but they're like the black people of Turkey.
Yeah, they're like the oppressed minority.
Mm. All right. So I think one thing that Nuri Bilge Ceylan, the director, he these movies are very Turkish, and almost I wouldn't be able to watch them without you next to me to explain some things. Like you explained a lot of things in The Wild Pear Tree, and also his other movie Winter Sleep as well. And like his movies are very insular, and I wonder why like they keep on getting pushed out to the Palme d'Or, like to the French awards and other film festivals, when I don't think a lot of people would understand them unless they've been to Turkey, know a lot about Turkish culture, or know Turkish people to explain it to them. Because I feel like his movies are very dense, because there's no explanation for these things. You sort of have to read between the lines or really pay attention to know what's going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, but I do also think like his movies are a bit more based on emotions and characters rather than like, culture and tradition. Yes, there is a lot of culture and tradition because he shots them at places that are like unique, and there are a lot of tradition there. It's not Istanbul where you go outside and see all kinds of people. It's like a small village in the east of, Turkey. So you only have like one type of person, which is like, Muslim and mostly conservative, very traditional and things like that. Like even though if they're not like that inside, they have to look like that from outside so they don't get cast out.
Right, but I was just talking about the entire system that he's in. Like, there's never an explanation on why he has to be there as a teacher. They never say that in any of his movies, right? They never say, "Oh, once you graduate from being a teacher, you have to go to the East for a certain amount of time." The government gives you that. They never explain why the army is so more prevalent in the East than they are in other places, and things like that. They never explain why the terrorist attacks are happening, like what blew up that girl's leg later in this movie. I was talking about that, not really like the cultural stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, we know that he can go, and there's some discussion about that. So maybe people can figure out like he's on a duty or something like that, like a teacher
Mm-hmm.
duty. But yeah, other than that, like they just have to like use their imagination, I guess.
To fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to read the second paragraph, or should I?
Can you pick because my computer died down, so I can't
Okay,
see it.
so in the first scene, Samet is dropped at a remote bus stop, the ground covered in powdery snow, and he walks the long distance to the school where he's in his fourth year of a compulsory education assignment. He'd rather be in Istanbul, he says, drawing a contrast between the rural and the urban, and is hoping to transfer at the end of the school year. He hopes for escape, however, threatened to be dashed when he and his roommate Kenan Musab Ekici, a native of the village who also teaches at the school, suddenly stand accused of inappropriate behavior by two anonymous students. They are also called to meet with the education director, who informs them that the situation already has been handled and they'll keep their jobs. But throughout the film, Samet struggles to make sense of these allegations, and the bureaucratic process seeks to protect the image of the education system more than establish anything approaching truth. As is revealed to the viewer over the course of the film, this truth is that Samet does bear some guilt, though perhaps not in any simple physical sense. Ceylan's slow-burning psychological drama isn't so concerned with indicting him, though, as it is in using the accumulation of detail over its 197-minute runtime to build a damning portrait of a misanthrope blind to the dark corners of his own interiority. That's a complex way of saying this. This guy, he was accused of, like, having inappropriate touching on one of his students, obviously Sevim, the young girl, as well as his, roommate Kenan, the other teacher who's from the village. They're brought into, like, the head director of education's office. He tells them this, but he doesn't want to reveal what exactly happened. They eventually find out, and for the rest of the movie, there's the struggle that Samet has on why this happened to him. But it happened to him because the principal came into the class where he was teaching one day and looked through all of his student stuff, and they found that Sevim wrote a love letter to the teacher, to Samet, and they're laughing about it and stuff like that. The other female teachers are laughing about this love letter this young girl wrote. Samet takes the letter, and when Sevim comes to him and says, "Give me the letter," he lies and says he doesn't have the letter. He threw it away. And what I like about Nuri Belgin's movies, Nuri Belgi Ceylan's movies, is that he makes his characters have big moral questions. It's like some of the biggest scenes in his movies are like, what would you do if this happened? You know what I mean? And that's what it felt like with the scene with the note from the student to the teacher, and he didn't want to give it up. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't know. What did you think about that paragraph, that scene, everything that we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was interesting because it's like, these things happen, and even though like there wasn't any sexual assault, like physical, I guess, like explicit, um, assault of the girl, yes, like she was uncomfortable, and I think she also took a little bit of revenge. But at the same time, just like these things, like sexism or sexual assault or racism and stuff like that, you can't always know if it's happening or not. Especially like imagine you're a kid and you have like great relationships with one of your teachers, and then this happens to you, and you're kind of like you don't know what is happening, you don't know what he's thinking, and where's that thin line, you have to like define it yourself. And yeah, so I was thinking about that a little bit, because probably if I was in Seven's like shoes, I wouldn't have gone to the principal, and I think she was brave to do that. Maybe motivated by revenge once again, but still, because it was kind of weird like how he was acting with her. We both felt that like it was inappropriate.
Right, right. Yeah, when I was watching this scene, when Sevim and Semat's relationship was sort of discovered by the other teachers, I was like, Turkish people have it so easy because in America, them teachers be fucking the students. I'm like, they don't know how easy they got it. They have to make a whole movie about this drama if they only knew. If they only knew.
Okay, that's gross. Of course, those things happen in Turkey as well, a lot,
Mm,
but it just didn't happen in this story. And once again, like most of the time, girls don't say it. And I think the only reason those girls said something was because she, like specifically Seven, wanted to get revenge. Even though like she was feeling uncomfortable by her teacher, I think she wouldn't have said anything unless Summit had her letter and didn't give it to her.
hmm Now,
So, because it's taboo. It's like, probably if something like this happened and she goes home at night and her mom is mad at her,
mhm,
probably like,
mhm.
why didn't you like mind yourself? Why did you talk to him outside of class and all of those things?
Right, right. So I think we really need to break down how big and important that scene is because the scene when Sevim asked for the letter back from Semat, the teacher, is probably one of the most important scenes in this movie because there's like three or four important, really big scenes, and that's one of them. And I think we have to ask the question: why didn't Semat just give the letter back to Sevim? And why did Sevim continue to say, "Give me the letter, please," after the teacher said, "I threw it away"? Even though we saw he didn't throw it away, we don't know if she knew that he didn't throw it away. You get what I'm saying? If maybe she either saw him put it back in his pocket or she just felt it and knew that he was lying. So I was thinking about that the entire time in the movie. Why didn't he just give it up? Was he so insistent on being powerful? Like, because he came across as this teacher who was supposed to be cool, understandable, honest. He was very nice with the little girl up to that point. But then all of a sudden he turns into this dick, this macho dick, and he's like, "No, I don't have your letter. No, no. What are you talking about? Seven, listen to me. Like, what do you think that was about? Why didn't he give it up?"
I think, first of all, I think he has God, I forgot the name of that thing. Pedophilic like tendencies.
Mm,
So and he actually like had, I feel like more than teacher student feelings towards Sevim, right? And I don't know if like he was feeling love or was it was sexual or maybe both. But I think he didn't give her the letter so that if he does anything in the future, that's what he was thinking. Like if he tries to make a move on her or catches her alone one day going to school or whatever, and he tries to like I don't know grab her or whatever, he can say like you wrote me a love letter, you know. I know you feel it. I know like you know this is what you want to. So he could use it against her like a trap. And I felt like that's why in the back of his head, even though maybe he didn't plan out all of this, in the back of his head, I think that was the reason why. And for Sevim, it was just like something so innocent, you know. Obviously, he doesn't want she doesn't know like you know how those things are, how sexuality works and stuff like that. She's not aware of those things, and so I think like yeah, Sevim was just afraid that you know he might use it against her or make fun of her or whatever.
That would be a very interesting movie, but the movie didn't go in that direction. And I like your theory, but it's hard for me to say. I think for me to say Seven, I mean, Samat had pedophilic, romantic, sexual desire for Seven. I didn't get that.
I mean,
I feel like it was just power for him.
it doesn't have to be sexual. It could only be love because I felt like the end of the movie kind of hinted that he actually loved Sevim. So, and obviously he doesn't. The movie didn't went that way because he got reported, and then he got scared. Like, of course, I'm saying like he could have done those things if nobody, you know, if nothing happened, and if Sevim didn't reported him. And like because if he continued or tried to pursue Sevim after that, he could have lost his like teaching license and all of those things.
Yeah.
So he didn't pursue it.
Well, I hear you. It's just still hard for me to buy into that, and I'm going to jump a little bit ahead into the story. So after Semat gets reported by Sevim and the other student as being touching on the students or whatever inappropriately, he gets to keep his job, but he starts going on a warpath against the students. He starts berating them in class, yelling at them. He starts making Sevim sit outside of class, and that's basically it for the rest of the movie. Like he's acting like a dick towards her until the end, and then he starts pursuing another woman in town who's also a teacher who lost her leg in a terroristic bombing, and he ends up sleeping with her. But it's not like Sevim is in the back of his mind. It's not like we see him, making love to her, making out with her, and calling the other woman Sevim or thinking about Sevim and stuff like that. I didn't get the feeling that there was any sort of love. It was just really, really more about control with him. I really think he looked at Sevim and people like her as people that he could manipulate and control and lie to because he looked down on them. Honestly, that's my opinion.
I think that could be part of it. Like I said, I think he does have that sort of superiority complex within like his personality as well. I feel like because I don't know, like I don't want to say all artists have that, but because he's a like underaccomplished artist, I feel like when you're an underaccomplished artist, maybe some people feel like, oh, they just don't know my worth, you know. So like, and they maybe some people think like I'm a genius, but the world doesn't know it yet. And I just felt like maybe he needed like a follower or something. Like he wanted to mentor somebody, and maybe Seven was that, and that's why he had deeper feelings about her.
I just didn't see it. I just didn't see it. I just thought maybe he was being nice to her. I think it's possible for a male teacher just to be really nice to a female student just because you think, oh, she's so cute. Or because, like, I've been teaching kids, right? And I've had, students that I liked more than others just because they were funny, just because they were cute. I didn't have any, like, extra feelings towards them. I'm like, that's a cute kid. Like, that person is funny. Like, generally, I like talking to them because they're pretty funny. You get what I'm saying? And I feel like he felt like that towards Seven rather than, damn, I love her, or I want to manipulate her and control her mind or raise her to think like me. I didn't get that at all. Because, like, when he got exposed or when Sevim snitched on him because he wouldn't give her the letter back, he turns into nighttime. It's cold now. And now he's evil towards her, even until the very end. You get what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Like, yeah, like I didn't want to say like, oh, he wants to teach everything he knows to her, not like that, but he sort of has like I don't know, like a complex. So I felt like he's looking for love and followers and people who would believe in him, and like you said, also people who he could manipulate. And Seven fit all of that.
Right, right. Okay, and now what did you think about all of the scenes when Samat and Kenan, the two teachers who were accused of wrongdoing, and they were trying to figure out who said what about them, and the government was like, "We're following procedure," and they were like just berating them and being like, "Tell us who did this to us. Tell us why they accused us of this," and all that sort of stuff. How did you feel about that? Because I felt like those scenes were interesting. With them interacting with the principal and the administrators, and they're using a lot of corporate doublespeak, and like we're just following procedure. It just felt it hit home for me because I've been in those positions when I'm like, who accused me of this? Y'all, why y'all hating on me? Like I've been fired before, and I asked like, why are y'all firing me? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't get into it right now, but you're just not the right cultural fit. Like, like what the fuck does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, explain. But
Yeah, but like okay, so the whole situation is handled by a counselor because this is an issue of like inappropriate sexual touching reported by a student. And as a counselor, you cannot like disclose your like patient's identity or what she said or he said, you know? So that's like the number one rule of being a counselor. It's like a therapy. So that's like, you know, that's the regulation. Like you cannot expose who did it or what they said. And also at the same time, like I was so annoyed in those scenes because I was like, okay, so there's like this allegation, and the head of the education comes in, and he says like, oh, like this situation happened, but I know it's a lie, so I'm just gonna cover it up.
Mm.
It's like, how the hell do you know it's a lie?
Mhm.
Okay, like and it's not like the girls said they raped us, right?
Mhm.
They said
Mhm.
like we are uncomfortable by us, touching them and stuff like that, and
Right.
those things did happen. So it's like automatically they dismissed like these girls because they are children,
Right.
and also because they are like women.
Yeah, it's problematic because they didn't take it seriously, even though in this case what happened was not very serious. But it highlights a bigger problem that okay, children might actually be reporting abuse, but it might get swept under the rug. Is that what you're trying to say?
Of course. And even though if it's not serious, okay, so this is not serious, so you're just gonna let him walk away with this one. What if
Mm.
he goes further? Because
Right.
now like this guy is like a predator, and he's like, okay, well, nothing is gonna happen because everyone is on my side.
Mhm.
No one is gonna take her word for it, so I might as well do it. I'm not
Right.
saying like it was gonna happen in this movie,
Mhm.
but like that's the reality of those type of places around the world, and also like in Turkey.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of
I
those like things happen, and people don't believe in kids.
I have to say, I have to ask you this question, right? In this movie, I feel like there is a film that could have been made that talks about the abuse of children and students in rural parts of Turkey, which I'm sure does happen, right? But I feel like in Turkish films, they always have to hold back because I feel like in Turkey, you guys don't like to make movies where you put that sort of dirt on Front Street. You don't like to make movies about controversial topics like pedophilia or teachers abusing students because maybe it's not polite or respectable. Am I tripping by giving that assumption? Because like Nuri, I feel like is a talented director to tell that story, but he's refusing to tell it instead.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there are like certain movies who highlight sexual assault and rape of women, but I don't think I've seen a movie where like a child is being sexually harassed. Or maybe like I did, but it was sort of like this one, if that makes sense. Like it was like, you don't really know what happened, and you're sort of like just guessing and imagining it yourself.
Mm,
So yeah, I mean that's the reality of it, and I don't know why it's not like portrayed as much as like domestic abuse, for example, because you can see domestic abuse, alcoholism, gambling addiction, and all those other stuff, in movies, but you won't see like, child sexual abuse or yeah,
right.
things similar to that much.
Right. I mean, this is the first Turkish movie I saw with a somewhat sex scene. There is kind of a sex scene here, which I felt like was oh wow, I didn't even know they could do that in Turkish movies.
I
So,
mean, like if yeah, I mean, there are some movies who have like normal sex scene, like how they have it in America. Like the woman would still have the bra on, and there will be like sheets on them and stuff like that.
mm,
So you're not gonna like have mea culpa level like sex scene, of course,
mhm,
but just like that vanilla sex scene. But I feel like for the most part, if you're talking about sex scene in a Turkish movie, it's probably like making out,
mhm.
like and very like vanilla making out.
Right. I just get the feeling that Nuri Bilge's films are still somewhat conservative, as in they don't want to show too many controversial topics. They just want to tell complex human stories through the Turkish countryside and like the rural parts of Turkey, but they don't want it to go into anything too controversial, if that makes sense.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I feel like for example, I think I told this before, but in Turkey, we always hear this like by our teachers, by our families and parents that like wherever you're born, it's your destiny. So like because I'm born in Turkey, my destiny is shaped in such a way that it would never be the same if I was born in United States. So I think Nuri's like films have that sort of vibe. Like
Hmm.
yes, it does deal with personal emotions and stuff like that, but it also adds up that like cultural part where you cannot change, and it is sort of your destiny.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, because I think a lot of his movies are characters struggling against a society that won't change, right? Like in Winter Sleep, like in The Wild Pear Tree, and like sort of like in this movie, because the characters sort of want something that cannot exist where they are.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump to the next part. So Kenan, we've come this far in the movie. We didn't talk about his roommate Kenan. So Samet and Kenan are perfect foils. Samet is longing for what he calls civilization, and Kenan is representing the sensibility of the local community, who, though stressed by their environment and social circumstances, they want to tax bachelors. One says, don't seem to harbor Samet's resentment or outlook. So basically, like Kenan wants change, but he's not as hard about it as Samet is. He doesn't want to change everything because he's from that community, right? So through a photo project he's been working on, we understand Samet is curious about the community that he's a visitor to, and he's appreciative of the beauty of its icy landscapes and the people who inhabit it. But he still fails to really care about their lives, lying and manipulating whenever it suits him. His artistic engagement with the humanity all around him only serves to highlight his mistreatment of the people. After their meeting with the educational director, Samet and Kenan, upset with how the allegations were handled, return to the school and confront the principal, who forwarded the accusations up the chain before speaking with the teachers. When Samet finally arrives back to class after the humiliating events of the morning, he lashes out at the students in anger, telling them that they'll never be artists and will only amount to planting beets and potatoes so that the rich can live more comfortably. Yeah. So, what did you think about the relationship between Samet and Kenan and how he acted towards the people in the city? I mean, yeah, in the village and stuff like that. What did you think?
Yeah, I think like even once again, even though like Summit and Kenan were living together, they were like best buddies, right? I think still Summit saw himself better than Kenan because he was like supposed to be this outspoken, like rebelling to everyone sort of type of person, and Kenan was like he was like an activist, not an activist, but like he was supporting women's right and stuff like that. But at the same time, he was like this, I'll just go with whatever like is happening type of person. And he was like a positive person, unlike Summit, because I felt like Summit was like a bit of a downer.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to like the community and stuff, yeah, like he goes to this guy who has like a shop or something,
Mm-hmm.
and he drinks whiskey with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then and stuff, and he it feels like he's and like I know this happens later in the movie, but like the owner of the store and some other guy who's like a some sort of like jobless guy around the village. They have all this argument, and at the same time, Summit is like not listening to them, and he's like, "Hey, pour me another drink," while they're having a heated argument.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he's not really caring about it. He's only caring about like whatever he can get out of them,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be like art
Mm-hmm.
or a drink or just like some appraisal and things like that. So yeah, I think we can see that. And I don't know, but I think like the way Summit lashed out at the students and said like you'll never be anything, you'll be planting beets and potatoes so the rich can live comfortably. That was sort of like a rebellion against capitalism and also his own state because he is that person, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
that person who couldn't become an artist and who's only like doing this minor job according to himself. So that the rich can live more comfortably. Like he's not technically planting beets and potatoes,
Mm-hmm.
but if you know what I mean, I feel like he was just like projecting his depression of capitalism. Like,
I got you. I didn't see it that way. I just felt like he went mask off full, asshole to the kids.
I mean that too, obviously.
Yeah. I was like, he's like, I was pissed. You guys try to get me fired? Do you know who I am? I could pop my collar right now and be in Istanbul. That's what it felt like. But yeah, when it comes to him taking pictures of the people in the city, right? I thought that was interesting how in this movie they have like pictures of people in the village, right? And they're beautiful pictures of them like playing soccer in the snow and like an old sheep herder like standing next to a mountain and stuff like that. And I think this movie is about, you can see whatever you want to see when you look at this story or when you look at these villages or these remote places. Because I feel like this movie has no direct plot. There's really no story to follow. It's just the adventures of this asshole. It's like one long episode of Seinfeld. So like you're going to see whatever you want to see in this movie, just like the pictures that they show here. Are these beautiful places that you want to visit, or are we looking at rural people who are backwards and behind? I guess that's how I look at that. And one more thing about Kenan. Kenan was an Alawite, so he's like not a traditional Sunni Muslim. So I think like they make that a part of the story to show that Kenan is sort of like outside the mainstream of his community, and that's why maybe him and Samet click up because Samet is an outsider, but he was born an outsider in that village too. So maybe that's why they have that friendship. You want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to say like maybe like Samet's character and the way like he's this artist might be a bit of a critique of that sort of artist, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like specifically, like either photographers or like people like directors and stuff like that. It's like they go to those places and they take pictures, but we don't know the story behind those people, or we don't know how he came to take their picture. We don't know if he was even nice to them, So I don't know. Maybe some people do sort of like use these people because they are ethnic or because they are different or
Mm.
unique and they're so far away from like our modern world. They're so pure, and that sort of marketing that happens. It's like I don't know. I'm sure like this happens to like the people going into the tribes in Africa and then portraying them as like so like out of touch and so natural and all those things. So weird traditions,
Mm-hmm.
like an alien.
Mm-hmm.
Making money from alienating them. I can't say the word.
Alienating.
Alienating them. So I don't know if that's a critique. Like his character is a
Mm.
critique of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know. I think so too. Because yeah, the way he is just taking the picture of these people. Like, there's a scene when the man is standing next to the horse, and Samet is like, "No, no, put your head down. Look sad. Make the horse look that way." Like he's setting them up to make this artistic picture, this vision, rather than taking pictures of people how they actually are. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, and you don't know, like, even if he was a big artist, he might be going back to Istanbul, display
Mm.
these pictures in a gallery, and he might be telling a made up story about how he met this man.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, but continuing on in the story. So all right, so seeing the world through Samet's eyes grows tiresome, even against Ceylan's poetically rendered backdrop. But the narrative blooms when we're introduced to Nure, Merve Dizdar. I hope I'm saying that right.
You want me to read it?
I thought you said your computer died.
Yeah, I opened it.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, but the narrative blooms when we're introduced to Nuray, Merve Dizdar, played by Merve Dizdar, who teaches at a school nearby. A friend attempts to set them up. Marital status holds a lot of importance here, but Samet is dismissive, immediately pushing her onto Kenan. Still, a love triangle develops between the three as Kenan's interest in Nuray triggers competitiveness in Samet. Dizdar, who won Best Actress at Cannes this year, plays Nuray with strength and poise, though the character may be written with a little too much flair for the symbolic. Giving the enlightened character a severe disability to show her strength and suggest a counterpoint to Summit's ambient disillusionment feels like a bit of a shortcut. But Dizdar anchors the character with a studied fatigue that she completely embodies, whether Nurai is having a morning coffee date or a romantic dinner, conveying a world of experience outside of the narrow view of her suitors.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So I think what I liked about Nure's character is that, she has the ability to leave the East if she wants to. She could even go to Istanbul. She has family there because she got her leg blown up in a terrorist attack that happened, I think, in the East, right? She gets special privileges, but she decides to stay there. And while Semet says, I want to leave, I can't wait to get away from these places. These people are backwards. I want civilization. She's like, I kind of like it here. I think there's a point to stay here. And, they write her character sort of like Frida Kahlo-ish. You know how Frida always had disabilities, was always sick, but she never gave up her sort of fire for, fighting for the poor and the dispossessed of the earth. They sort of made her like this. That's why I asked you last night, like, what's a Turkish name that starts with the F? Like Freya or something like that?
Feride.
Feride, right? I was like, Feride Kahlo. Like, this is the Turkish Frida Kahlo character, right? And yeah, I liked her character, but I don't know if it was like an amazing acting job. I don't know. I don't know. What did you think of it?
I think like in terms of acting, I think she did a good job, like just conveying her strength, but at the same time, just like giving us that tiredness
Mm-hmm.
of life and all the things that she lived through. And it's like when I heard her dialogues in some scenes, I was like, oh my god, like somebody give this woman some peace because I feel tired for her because
Mm-hmm.
like she went all through these things and she still has to live more.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's really hard, I feel like, especially today, to play like a empowered person or feminist, especially if you're a woman, sort of like activist or whatever, and not be seen as cringe.
Mm.
And I think she did that like good, if that
Mm-hmm.
made sense,
Yeah.
because she was like, she in a scene where she, and Summit talk about like entering into the building, and Summit is like, "Is it okay for the neighbors?" Because neighbors
Mm-hmm.
talk if they see a single man entering her apartment, and she says like, "We've come a long way." But
Mm-hmm.
then when he comes to her house, she asks if anybody saw him
Mm.
and stuff like that. So even though she has like that sort of ideology and practicality, she also embodies like how we are as Turkish women. I
Mm-hmm.
feel
Mm-hmm.
like.
Yeah, I think because they made her so tired and also have a disability, it allowed her to not be that sort of naive feminist character who's like, radical and pointy about her point of view. Like it made her more real because she's actually suffered for her beliefs and is still suffering for her beliefs, but still holds on to them. So yeah.
Okay. What did you think about like Summit like meeting with her? I guess they met her through Instagram. Like Summit
Mm-hmm.
met her through Instagram, and
Mm-hmm.
then like he literally asked Kenan while they were like alone. He said,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, do you want to like date with this girl? Like I can
Mm-hmm.
set you guys up." But
Mm-hmm.
then he was like, I don't know. He turned it into a love triangle,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, he now suddenly like wants to be with this lady when
Mm-hmm.
he was like pushing her.
Yeah.
What did you think about that? What was like his motive there? Like what was he trying to do?
Right. I think he obviously just wanted to smash.
Then
But
like why did he introduce her to Kenan in the first place?
because I think at first he did have good intentions on introducing his friend to some girl. Because I feel like Semet saw himself leaving, but his friend staying. So he was like, you know what? Let me try to help you out. But then when he actually got to know Nure and also saw that his friend Kenan was about to have something that he couldn't have, his jealous, evil nature kicked in. So he was like, no, it's mine, 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 mine. Because Semet is like a selfish, greedy, bastard. I don't know how else to put it. So that's what I think from watching it. What do you think?
Yeah, like I thought like that as well. Like he just
Mm-hmm.
wanted chaos,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, he just wanted like he wanted to show Kenan the carrots, like the carrots
Mm-hmm.
in front of a horse, and
Mm-hmm.
then he just took it away,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to show like he could.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like that was
Mm-hmm.
like him satisfying his ego, but because maybe his ego was shattered by Sivim,
Mm-hmm.
by a little girl.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think what Kenan went through in this movie was probably the biggest tragedy, right? Because this guy showed that he didn't even actually care about him as a friend. I was actually thinking Kenan and Semat were actually going to be strong brothers throughout this movie, but the betrayal that Semat has for Kenan by sleeping with the girl that he introduced to his friend is downright awful, and Kenan doesn't have any sort of recourse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I was thinking like the same thing. I didn't think they were gonna. I thought it was just gonna be like Kenan and Nurai together,
yeah.
and Summit was gonna like kicked out. Which I'm kind of mad at Nurai for going for Summit. Like he's an asshole. Why did you go for him? I don't know.
Well, the explanation was, if you remember, I'm sure you do. Nure says, since I've lost my leg, I'm trying to figure out how the world sees me as a woman. So, why not test out if I'm still sexy and hot by getting some dick from this, lowly dude,
Yeah, but why not get that dick from like Kenan? Kenan was better looking, and he
Uh,
wanted to smash as well.
I don't think he wanted to smash though, because like he was playing it cool. Like he was giving her driving lessons. He was like just hanging out with her as a friend. You know, I don't know if Kenan really liked her like that.
I think he did, and also like he was just being like a gentleman. And yes, sometimes a girl doesn't want a gentleman. Sometimes girl wants her clothes to be ripped off. Okay, but I don't know. Summit is not it. I think like if she gave like Kenan the green lights, I think Kenan would go for it.
I see. I see. Okay, so let's jump ahead and let's try to get to the meat because
Okay.
there's an interesting scene when they go to the apartment, right?
Yeah.
So during a centerpiece sequence, when Samet and Nure, who's more fond of Kenan, find themselves alone in her apartment, their dinner devolves into a debate of political philosophy. Comrade Nure, as he calls her, is critical of those like Samet who complain about the state of things without ever attempting to do anything about it. Samet emphatically opposes solidarity, viewing it as a freedom-limiting burden. At the height of their arguing, Samet says something that halts the dialogue. The camera is positioned behind Nure's head, and a breeze blows through her hair. A shadow flutters on the wall. The mood shifts quietly. Ceylan slowly then paces to something almost hypnotic, allowing the viewer to take in everything in this wide frame. When Nure finally invites Samet to her bedroom, it's clear she's still not a big fan, but she's weary, she says, settling for what comfort he can offer in that moment. She asks Samet to turn out the lights in the living room, and it's at this point that Ceylan takes advantage of the immersive state he's brought the viewer to with a stunning Brechtian flourish. As Samet walks through the apartment, turning off the lights, he suddenly walks through a door and onto a soundstage. We're now looking at Çeliloglu, the actor, as he washes his hands in a bathroom, before returning to Nure's bedroom, as well as the artifice of film. It's Ceylan's way of nudging you awake, a reminder not to get too caught up in the narrative. What did you think about that scene when he walked backstage and revealed, hey guys, this is all a movie? Like, what was that about? What did you think of that?
I mean, I understood it was like, backstage, and I thought like something was gonna happen there. Maybe I thought it was gonna be like I was expecting maybe like a reveal or something,
Yeah.
but nothing happened. Like the story continued because the actor went back to the scene,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know why he wanted to get us out of the film. Maybe it was, yeah, like that moment was very intense in the movie. Probably it was the most intense. It was sort of like the climax, right? So yeah, maybe that's why. Like, I'm not really sure. What did you think?
Only in Turkish film do they have to remind you this is a movie before they have a sex scene. That's what I felt like. Like the Turkish regulators sent a message like, Nure, remind them this is just a film. Don't pollute the youth. So then he said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Hey guys, let's just shoot the soundstage. Let everybody know he's not actually fucking her. that's what I felt like it was.
I mean, maybe that's like Nuri's way of rebelling against these regulations in Turkish media. I don't know. Maybe he was like, okay, well, if you're not gonna like allow me to do this, then I'm just gonna like troll you or something. Because like the thing is like if this movie had like a sex scene, then if they show it on TV, like this, I don't know, very important director in Turkey that won an award internationally, and they would show it in the TV and they would cut that part out, just like that without any editing. Like it's just cut, and like it's like cut mid sentence or something. And then it continues like from somewhere else. Like it's like a like a kid did it. And that sometimes, most of the time, is very disrespectful to the whole like movie cast, right? Like the director and everything. So maybe that was like his way of, I don't know, protesting against that. I don't know, since they talked about protesting and opposing things and stuff.
Right. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. And by the way, for anybody who hasn't seen this movie, it's not like the sex scene is graphic. There's no humping. There's no rolling in the sheets. It's not mea culpa, like Acti said earlier. But I don't know. I just have to wonder why that scene happened. And a part of me is maybe thinking, in Turkey, they do have sort of these standards that say, if you're going to have a sex scene, you got to remind people it's fake or something like that. And yeah, maybe by cutting those scenes, Acti, it's disrespectful to the people that work on the movies, right? So maybe Nori was saying, like, if you're going to cut this, look at all the people who worked on this film, right? Look at all the people who, spent a day just trying to get this right. You know what I mean? But other than that, it didn't make any sense. And it was very weird. And it's not like this was a very intense movie, you know? If there was a scene when, I don't know, Semath was about to sleep with Seven, if he was about to sleep with that little girl, then maybe that scene would have been important to remind people it's just a movie. But it was just two people about to have nasty, paraplegic sex. Like, what?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, no, it wasn't that intense, obviously, compared to a lot of movies. But just like, it was in the movie, it was like the most intense scene in the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe. And there wasn't a sex scene, by the way. It was just like them trying to kiss weirdly without any emotional connection.
Right. But then they obviously have sex because they lay in the bed and wake up the next morning.
Yeah, but that's all you see. Like they lay in the bed and then it's the next morning. Like you don't see anything in between. That's why I said there's no sex scene.
But once again, I like how in Nuri's movies there are these big questions that get answered. Like, what would you do if your school accused you of inappropriately touching students, but you didn't know who said it, right? What would you do if a one-legged communist wanted to have sex with you? Would you do it? Like, these are big moral questions. I like how he just puts them out there.
Wow. Okay. What would you do if some student accused you of sexually harassing them? Not harassing, but just like they said, since you're an online teacher, let's say they said like they make inappropriate sexual comments or something.
I would be like, that's impossible because I got the recording right here, and that is not what I said.
You record everything?
I always record my classes. Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, that's good.
But either way, if that did happen, because I didn't always record my classes, I would definitely protest and say that is not me. That's not my character. I have a beautiful wife. These big titty Peruvians are not my speed. Sorry, there's nothing a Peruvian can offer me, and my big booty Turkish wife can't. So
Okay, if you're gonna explain it like that, I don't want the answer.
okay, but I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, what would you do if you were a teacher accused of? Because let's keep it real. Like women be jumping on these 14-year-old boys at school in my country. So what would you do?
Oh my God.
Well, I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah, but you cannot generalize that. Jesus Christ.
It happens so much. It happens so much
In
that,
your country, I'm
but
not
it,
American.
okay, but it could happen in Turkey too. But maybe they're not checking. But all I'm saying is, let's say you were an American teacher, and then somebody said, "Acti is trying to sleep with my 15-year-old son." That is a very believable thing. That's very believable, right? It's
Yeah.
believable because a lot of young teachers are doing that. How would you react?
I mean, I wouldn't do anything. Like, if obviously I'm not guilty, so what can I do? I just like let it die out, I guess, and be mindful of like my, demeanors in general. I would just like be, cold to every like student,
Oh,
not as in like cruel, not like Summit, but I just wouldn't like, come into their personal space really.
you're gonna come into the classroom and say, "All of you fat American bastards, you're just meant to
No,
flip hamburger."
no, I wouldn't bully them like Summit. I just would like, I probably like, if that's an accusation, you probably might know who said it.
Mhm.
So I would just like keep my distance with every student, basically.
Okay. Not to get too off track here, but I've covered this on my channel before, but I still have no answer. Why do you think so many young female teachers sleep with these teenage boys in high school, in middle school? Like, why do you think that happens?
I don't know, Simon. They feel like they are wanted as like older women, and so they sleep with the kids. I don't
But
know, which
but
is
they're
wrong.
not they're not
Don't do it.
older women. These girls are like 25, 26, 27, sleeping with 15, 16-year-olds. Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did realize that the younger generation looks older. Like, you know how they have those memes, like girls who are 15 now, and they have like they have lip fillers and BBLs and stuff like that. Of course, not all girls, but since there's like much more, freedom when it comes to makeup and fashion and all of those things,
Hmm.
girls or guys also, and I think this is also genetically changing as well. They look a bit older and more mature when compared to like when I was 15. I was like ugly Betty, or not ugly Betty. Like I wasn't ugly, but I was just like very childish. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why.
Man, there was I was in ROTC in high school, and one of the commanders, he was like a former Navy guy, right? He used to comment all the time that the girls in my generation were getting big old titties and big booties because we were eating KFC. He kept saying this all the time. He was like, all that KFC y'all eating is making y'all look grown, right? And the crazy thing is, this guy, his name was Commander Allen. I'll never forget. Commander Allen used to play a lot, like with us as students. He was that cool teacher. He was that cool teacher, but he used to he used to say some wild comments, some wild sexual comments about kids in general. And a few years ago, Commander Allen got caught up in a situation where basically he was roughhousing with one of the girls who was in ROTC. And basically she said that Commander Allen like smacked her on the face, knocked her glasses off, and then felt up on her titties. And now Commander Allen got a mugshot. I'll never forget that. And when everybody who graduated from Neville High School found out about Commander Allen, we were not shocked. We were like, we kind of saw it coming, but we were still surprised because like for us it was normal how Commander Allen was like talking to us and stuff like that. You get what I'm saying? But now looking back on it, it was like very problematic. You get what? Do you follow me? I don't know if I just went
Yeah.
off somewhere.
No, no. Yeah, that's first of all, that's crazy. But I don't know what to say. Like, yeah, I feel like that's the reason.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I don't know. Kids are kind of like different from how I was a kid and how we were a kid. And I found I'm just gonna comment section so y'all can see because it's hilarious.
Oh, you posted a meme in the under the chat in
Yeah,
this? Okay, I didn't see it yet.
it should be there.
But okay, I see it now. So 15-year-olds in my day versus 15-year-olds now. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. I don't be looking at 15-year-olds to really check this to really understand the meme, but
Me
I get
neither,
that.
but it's just a meme, Simon.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But either way, moving on, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. So Nure's wariness doesn't seem to be hers alone. It hangs over the wintry countryside where they teach amidst rural hardship and lingers throughout the seasons of as the snow melts, revealing dry grasses underneath. The only remnant of whatever lively vegetation must have existed once before. Nure doesn't even seem to see her own grievances as worth stating. The look in her eyes, one of deep understanding. Everyone here is weary. On the last day of school in the spring, Samet has one last confrontation with Sevim, who seems to be back to where she started, adoring her teacher. Because of her happier demeanor, he thinks even worse of her presumed accusations. He tries to coerce an apology or some kind of acknowledgement out of her that she made a mistake in reporting him, but she doesn't react to his insults. She's a child, of course, and can't even comprehend his cruelties. In the movie's final sequences, Samet, Kanan, and Nure explore ancient ruins, the leftover riches that remain from civilizations long past. The connection between these landscapes, culture, and history are foundation of Ceylan's cinema. The spirit of longing that animates the film is a natural part of the human experience. This bird's eye view suggests. Our circumstances might change, but life's essential questions never seem to. In an eternal monologue that narrates the passage, Samet says, "Seasons come and go, hopes are born and die, hopes are born to die, and still life goes on." The sudden voiceover is powerful and apt as a wrap up. That he stands away from Kenan and Nure as his monologue unfurls seems to suggest that even amidst hardship, connection and catharsis are available to us if we can find a moment to gaze outside of ourselves. What did you think of the ending of the movie?
Yeah, I mean, that whole like last scene with Sevim and Summit, it was once again disturbing. I was like, oh my god, like, can this guy like just let it go? Like, he's leaving, let this little girl go, don't torture her anymore. And yeah, I think she also didn't think she did anything wrong. And like it says it here, she's a child. Like, she's not gonna be holding grudges like adults do, and specifically like Summit does, for like a whole 3 months, or
Mm-hmm.
something, or maybe even longer.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, it was like kind of sad that she was trying to like get back in his good graces again.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, she once again found herself in this sort of like emotionally abusive situation once again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like was wishing when she brought him the cake, I wish the cake was poisoned so that he would die. That's what I was literally thinking in my head. But yeah, I mean, the ending, it was okay. Like, inner monologue, yes, like the questions are the same. And when I watched it, I wasn't like, oh my god, like this is so poetic or whatever. I don't know. It just felt like I was a bit weirded out because I was like, why are these three hanging out together again?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of confusing and also like weird.
Yeah.
Not weird, but it felt like a three dot ending.
Exactly. That's why I think this movie really has no point. It has no plot. It's just some things that happened, but there's nothing gained from it, nothing learned from it. And that's why after we watch this movie, something I usually don't do after we watch a movie, actually, I said, this was horrible. This was really bad. Like, like your guy Nuri is actually a really good director. The cinematography in this movie is great. The acting is generally great. The scenes are great. But this is definitely his most bland story. There's nothing gained from any of this. Sure, it's an interpretive movie. You can draw from it what you want, but what did we gain by Nuri confronting Semat and Kenan about the relationship triangle that they're in now? Because Nuri told Semat, "Don't tell Kenan," and then what did Semat do? He told Kenan, but then there's no resolution for that because Nuri's like, "Okay, can you guys drive me home?" After she confronts them, and then Sevim confronts the teacher, and she's no longer in the winter phase; she's now in the spring phase. Everything is forgiven and forgotten, but he is still holding on to the grudge and trying to manipulate this girl's mind. And then she's like, "Okay, I guess I'll go." And meanwhile, he's over here like romanticizing and fantasizing about this girl and the relationship they could have had and stuff like that at the end of the movie. I'm like, what did we gain? What did we just learn from this? Nothing. Nothing, bro.
It's so funny. You're funny. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't mind, not gaining anything from the story. I can appreciate a story just for it being a story. But what I didn't like was that, like, in the end, they, this guy was an awful person for the most of the movie, and then in the end, they made him look like this, having inner monologue type of like wise person. I don't
Yo,
know. I didn't.
he's fake deep. He's fake deep.
Yeah, yeah. It was like fake deep, and I didn't like that. I wish, I'd rather hear Nurai's, inner thoughts rather than Summit
Yeah.
or Sevim's. I don't know.
Yeah, this was it's so unfulfilling to watch something for 3 hours and walk away from it wanting your 3 hours back, which is what I wanted. Because I really, his other movies that we've watched I really enjoyed, but this one really has no point. There's no period. It's dot dot dot, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, like, as a Turkish person, like, knowing some of the problems in our society, I do think there is a lot of like social commentary in it, and also like there's a lot of personal, individual, like, this struggle, a lot of character built, not built, but character like shown, I guess,
Hmm.
inside of the character. But yeah, the ending was a bit of a letdown for me.
Hmm. I have to say though, I liked the last scene with Sevim and the snow all in her hair. That looked hella cool. But once again, I think that was an image in Semat's mind of what Sevim is like, this cold ice princess who he can never have. And once again, I don't think Semat is in love with Sevim, but he is like obsessed with once again having or controlling this distant girl. You know what I mean? He's sort of like orientalizing her, like making her seem distant and foreign, as if she's not Turkish too. You get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I feel like he's looking at her as something distant, like the way a French person looks at Turkish people as distant or Arabs as distant. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like, after the whole thing happens with Sevim, he like sort of has this, not the same connection, but there's another girl that
Mm-hmm.
comes in to get some boots, if you remember, and then he talks to her a couple of times. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, like, oh, now that he doesn't have Sevim, is he going to like, try to have that connection with another girl
Mm-hmm.
who looks like Sevim or like
Yeah.
looks like she's from there, she's very native, like
Mm-hmm.
those like thick hairs and dark skin and that sort of thing.
Well, the thing is, like, there's a scene where the school is giving away like free clothes, free boots, free school supplies, but he's just like not paying attention to any of it. He's like, "Hey, take something from the box, take a bag, okay, go." And like the students come in there and they're taking like two of things. So like one girl came in there and took one jacket, but then took two, and this other girl took a pair of boots, but it was definitely too small for her. But he didn't pay attention to that until he walks outside and sees, oh wait, I didn't give her that jacket or those pair of boots. Oh, that's who the girl gave it to. He gave it to her. She gave it to her sister and stuff like that. And I think that's commentary maybe on like these people, they go to the East or to do charity work, but they don't actually care about or know anything about these people. Maybe
Yeah.
I think that's what they're trying to say. But either way, why is there so much subtext? Like, come on, put it in the face. Pause. No Diddy. Put it in your face. Like, I hate how Nuri's movies are just like you have to read in between the lines. Like, I'm sick of that.
Yeah, I think like, because the thing is like this story could have had that conclusion, like
Mm,
how the Wild Pear Tree had or the Winter Sleep had, where our, lead character could have realized something, but he said nope. He's
nope.
just going to be like living in his own like, imagination. He's probably going to go back to Istanbul and
Yeah,
probably going to tell a whole another story about like this, magical Eastern place that he's been in and how people are, backwards
yeah.
and all those things, like he's still not realized anything.
Yeah. And maybe I was because when I found out this movie was about a teacher, I was like, okay, I'm gonna definitely feel this movie too. Like the same way I felt the Wild Pear Tree. But it was just very empty. Like it was empty on like what does it mean to be a teacher? Like to be a person that children have to look up to and admire and have those and what is a healthy relationship between student and teacher? Like this movie could have answered a lot of those questions, but we're just left with this guy being fake woke, fake deep, fantasizing about this 9-year-old girl. Like
I
what?
mean, yeah, like the only person who could have been a role model in this movie was the principal.
Mm-hmm.
And even him, he was trying to play nice to the teachers because he didn't obviously want like a rebellion against him. They didn't want
Yeah.
the teachers to, put a bad word about him.
Yeah. Yeah. But after talking about this movie, I'm dropping my score. At first, it was a 6. Now it's a 5. Like Nuri Bilge has better movies. I think maybe a lot of people just hype up his movies because Nuri cracked the code. He found the great way to make $1 million. Shoot a movie in Eastern Turkey with about $200,000 and put it in theaters, and you'll make $2 million. That's 10x easy because his movies don't have special effects, no special choreography. It's just dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. Wide shots of open Turkish fields and snow. Long conversations with people speaking with their hands. A lot of clutter on the tables, a lot of Turkish food in the
A
background,
lot of
and you
tea.
got yourself a movie. And tea, and tea, and tea, and tea. Did we mention tea? You want some tea? That's a Nuri Bilge film. And you can shoot that. You can make that movie on your iPhone with your homies for $20 over a 2-week span. The only thing you have to pay for is lighting and food, and put it in theaters, and you'll be at Cannes. That's it. Like what? This man's running the biggest scam.
I mean, I one thing that he did that he didn't do before in his other movies was that he brought us out of the movie with that
Mm-hmm.
like going around the sound room thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was different, and I think that was brave, even though it did make sense.
Like
Maybe
he's
it
trying
was
to
like
trick us.
him, like just attempting at something that he had as an idea,
He
or
was
he was like trolling the audience or whatever.
he was trolling us into believing that his movies actually have a sound crew.
Wow,
Like he's not shooting this on a Nikon DLSR. Like he is literally doing this, holding it on a steady cam. He's got a tripod, one lighting. He's got a ring cam. He's got a ring light, a Nikon DSLR, and he's shooting these movies. And he's telling them just talk, talk.
wow. But yeah, I didn't. I mean, I didn't mind the movie. I just didn't like the ending.
Mm,
And I would give this movie a 6.
mm,
And
okay.
yeah, I think like so far I like Winter Sleep the best, honestly.
No, no,
And
Wild Pear
then
Tree.
I just Wild Pear Tree is good when you think about like all the themes and stuff, but
Hmm.
at the same time the dialogue sometimes is so dragging. It's like so long
Right.
and it's just unmotivating for me at times.
I mean, the Wild Pear Tree, I think, has great scenes and great themes, but I think nothing will top the scene in Winter Sleep when one of the main characters throws a big pile of money in the fire and looks directly at the camera and says, "What, bitch? What?" Like, I don't think we'll ever review Winter Sleep because it's too damn long. But no movie we've watched has topped that scene so far.
Yeah, it was a good like scene, and yeah, I just think it's more it's better than like Wild Pear Tree. So my thing is like the my favorite one is Winter Sleep, then Wild Pear Tree, then About Dry Grasses. What about you?
Okay. No, it's Wild Pear Tree, Wild Pear Tree, Wild Pear Tree, Winter Sleep, About Dry Grasses.
Okay.
That's my answer. But yeah, all right. Well, overall, this has been our review for another Turkish film about dry grasses, 2023, episode 37. Shout out to Avery Adams for jumping into the chat. Shout out to everybody who's been recommending movies, sending movies, checking out the movies we're watching. Send your suggestions, send anything you want us to watch. We're open to everything. AKDI is picking the next film. It's on the timeline on my Twitter. I think it's going to be the film Society of the Snow, a 2023 Spanish film. So be on the lookout for that. And subscribe to Backpack Bandits. Simon Hill keeps it trill. And also, go on Spotify to check out these episodes in Cinema Crossroads. That's our Spotify playlist. All right, peace.